I had that opportunity when I was speaking to a news reporter from NPR. And we just ended up talking. She was asking about programs I created. And she said, "What are you in prison for?" And I said, "I'm in prison for the murder of another human being." And I saw her looking and wanting me to explain more, and everything in me wanted to explain more. But I had to remind myself about that challenge for myself. But the weird thing was, the more I sat still with it, the more this sense of liberation came over me, where I felt, you know what? I'm not that same person anymore. I don't have to qualify this. Yes, I committed that murder, but I'm not that same person, so I don't have to justify this to give a reason why.
And here he is. Hello, Quan. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Nicholas. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Doing well. I was cleaning up some last stuff, and I looked like, oh my goodness, it's time to go hop on the call. So time just flew by this morning.
Yeah. Well, I'm very honored to have you. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for taking a chance and reading the book and all that.
Absolutely. I guess I'll instead of giving you an introduction, I really would like you to give the people listening an introduction into who Quan Huynh really is.
Okay. What could be helpful? Just basically a really brief background or something?
I mean,
or you'll just ask me questions as I go, or what?
No. I definitely have some questions. I just mean like, in the book, you talk a lot about, you've done a lot of things, or you came from this background, but who is Quan Huynh, like, at the core?
Okay. We'll do that then. You're talking about right now? Do we do it right now?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we were already recording and all that. Okay.
Yeah. No, my mistake.
So, I mean, at the core, when I went back to, especially for my writing process, I realized at the core that I'm a creative. I am an entrepreneur, and I think there's still part of me that just doesn't feel like I fit in, and I guess maybe that's just the human condition, is to want to fit in. But that's basically me at the core. It's just a creative, entrepreneurial individual that's still looking for a place to really feel like I fit in. Yeah.
And so you did 2 stints in jail or prison.
Four. I've done a total of 22 years of my life in and out. But four times. The last one was the life sentence.
And then, because of that, you are now, that's one of your main focuses, right? Is this whole Defy Ventures nonprofit. Can you tell people a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, sure. Defy Ventures is a nonprofit that helps men and women with criminal histories to transform their lives through the journey of entrepreneurship. So it's a program that we began inside prison. It's about 7 months. It's called the CEO of Your New Life. And it culminates in a pitch competition that's done Shark Tank style with judges that we bring in from the streets. The judges are typically from the venture capitalist and tech space. Quite a few serial entrepreneurs that come in with us, but and/or it's just people that just believe in the possibility of second chances or redemption. And after that, when they come home is when they come into our post-release program, where we help them in their reentry journey. Whether that's getting up to speed on technology, rebuilding their credit, putting a resume together, getting them connected with employment partnerships. Because part of our mission is to reduce the recidivism rate in a nation by over 50%.
Okay, and so you wrote Sparrow in the Razor Wire, Finding Freedom from Within While Serving a Life Sentence. Is that book something that you use in that program, or is that completely independent?
Oh, no. Yeah, the book is written independently. The book it's also written for men that are doing long or life-term sentences. Before I joined Defy, I joined Defy while I was still in prison, but before I joined Defy Ventures and got involved in their program, I already saw at the time, I was already helping men around me prepare. We used to call it board prep, but now, basically I was coaching them to reflect back to them. How did they become their best self? How do they accept responsibility? What does amends look like? How do our choices define who we are? So all of that tied in together. And I realized, during that time, I helped maybe 10, 12 men get found suitable to go home, which is not an insignificant amount, but I think, so my focus when I wrote the book is I can help a lot more. Like I was challenged by one of my great friends, Tucker Max, who said, do you really want to help, or do you really want to scale this out? Do you really want to make an impact in the world? Well, here's your opportunity. So that's why he had pushed me to write the book. And that's why I wrote the book.
And that whole process that you're trying to teach other people, other inmates, is, I would say, probably the central theme of the book and the central theme of life, which is one of the things I found super interesting and relatable about the book, is that being in prison is really just like, you're going through the same process of life. You're just doing it without as many freedoms. And so can you talk a little bit about that process of, taking ownership for your own life and how that applies to your life now too?
Yeah. I just noticed my life leading up to that moment, I always had an excuse for everything. But when I started applying like lessons of personal responsibility in my life, like this thing didn't happen to me. I'm choosing to let this experience either make my day or make my day better or make my day worse. I started to gain clarity and a huge sense of like inner freedom and I would have to say like liberation from inside. So then not only did I notice that in myself, I started noticing it in other people around me, which also helped me to realize where I still needed to work on myself. So every day, prison became a place of continued lessons and continued refinement for myself and my mind. Then I became fascinated with books on that subject of making choices, and books on personal responsibility, books on effective communication. These are things I aspire to, and what better place to practice it than inside the biggest fishbowl that I lived in, which was prison. We're inside confined in just dorm setting, and I could just see it playing out, different personalities, different characteristics of people, and I saw this is a way that I can make myself a better person, even if I'm in here with this life sentence. But then the benefit of all that, suddenly I had this sense of power in my life where I could walk through each day and realize, what is my lesson for today? And it's just curiosity. Instead of going through the day and I noticed the men around me that had become bitter and resentful, it was more, this is what's happening to me. They have no control over it. And this is why they're angry. This is why they're mad, because the world has continued to beat them down. And I saw it was such a dark place for me to be in. And I saw it was a dark place for a lot of these men. So that's when everything just tied together for myself in there. And I saw a better way out and I wanted to share it. So even even in writing the book, it wasn't about me teaching anybody. It was only about me sharing of my own failures and my own challenges along the way. And I'm hoping that the readers, the men inside, you know, and I guess even people out here, find their lessons out of it if they want, and hopefully apply it to themselves in some way.
Do you think that it was in a way kind of easier when you were in prison to have such a strong focus on all of these things? You know, there aren't as many distractions.
Yes, in a way, it was once I got my mind focused, because in there it's a shared purpose with other men. Is all of us want to go home, or all of us want to gain some type of freedom or get back some sense of freedom. Um, so in some respects, yes, it was easy. Especially, it was just that I was just in that perfect time during my life where everything seemed to be in alignment. Like, let's say, yes, I was in prison, but I could have been on a retreat, or taking a sabbatical in the mountains. It was just a place for me to be removed from society, to work on myself. Um, and then, you know, then I was thrown out here where a lot of people have not had the opportunity to work on themselves, which makes it a little bit more challenging in trying to navigate out here. Whereas in there, you know, so there's at least that baseline of okay, these people have started to do some work on themselves, and they realize, like, um, anger and blame is not the way. So it's a little bit easier to communicate yes.
And what are some of the challenges now that you are outside and continuing to focus on these lessons and this growth?
Oh, I mean, like everyday challenges that we all face. Let's say whether you're stuck in traffic, and people are angry and honking the horn and yelling at each other, standing in line at the grocery store, like during COVID, or the rush of people cutting in line, and just that paranoia, and there's no, you know, sense of respect for, you know, it's weird because in prison, where there's a sense of mutual respect amongst each other, because there's no cutting in line, there's none of that, because things like that often lead to violence. Everyone knows where it goes, so people are a little bit more mindful, and in a weird way a lot more respectful. Whereas out here, um, you know, there's not that understanding. So it's more, well, I'm just going to cut in line because I'm whatever's going on in my life is much more important than whatever's going on in everyone else's life around me, or however the person is processing of why, or justifying why they feel the need to do what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, I've experienced quite a bit of that, which was shocking for me at first, until I just realized, you know what, this is where this person's at. They just haven't had an opportunity to work much on themselves, and wherever they're at, they're either they must be on a rush to get somewhere, or they're just in such a dark place that they don't see others around them at this time. So it just makes me understand them more, not to really you know, to be okay with what they're doing, but it makes me a little bit more understanding, so it doesn't bother me as much, and I'll go, okay, I'm grateful to where I could be okay with this, and just let them go on their way.
I love that. I want to go back to your childhood a little bit, because I feel like I just started the process, right, of going back and looking at my childhood and seeing the ways in which I've become defensive or protective of myself. Or what were some of the stories that you told yourself growing up about the things you saw and the things that you lived?
Let me see. When you know, I grew up in Provo, Utah, and when I experienced what I now know to be racism, I thought it was um, something's wrong with me, or there's something wrong with our family. There's something wrong with us or my life. When my father passed away from leukemia, it wasn't because it was cancer and he died. It was more, uh, something's wrong with me because God didn't want my father to live. He didn't want me to make a prayer. Um, yeah, things like that all the time. So there was, you know, it was a very selfish way of looking at it, but that's just how I process things that happened to me. You know, growing up in Utah, just wishing that, oh, why can't I look normal like the kids around me? Not truly understanding, like, you know, each of us is unique in our way, but for me, it was more about, I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want to be teased or bullied. Uh, yeah, so then moving out here to California, it was still the same thing. going to school with kids of different races and still not feeling like I fit in with them, or even when going to school with Vietnamese kids for the first time, being teased because I could not speak Vietnamese well and they could not speak English well, and how that made me feel where I didn't fit in. So yeah, and it was just this constant reinforcement. Oh, something's wrong with me. I don't fit in. People don't like me.
You also talk a lot about, or not a lot, but you talk about your father sort of having difficulties expressing his fears and his emotions, and how you learned from that. And I think it ties to a later point in the book when you say that you were hiding behind your own feelings, behind the word disrespect. Can you tell me what you mean by that a little bit?
Yeah, it was something later I realized in prison is the excuse for every fight or any time if somebody does something, the go-to word is that guy disrespected me. And once someone says that, then they have an excuse to call someone else out to fight. And it wasn't later when I realized like what is really like when I was reading books on like emotional intelligence and reading books on expressing feelings, that I realized this word that we used, disrespect, was more an umbrella to hide behind everything, to stuff every feeling. So because a man can't say, I'm afraid, let's say he's getting teased, or he gets cut, someone cuts in front of him in line at the chow hall, or makes fun of him in a sexual way or something. You know, prisoners, it's a weird type of prison humor, but sometimes it goes too far, and he'll make a sexual reference joke, but the person is afraid that everyone else thinks around him that, oh my God, if I don't say anything right now, people are going to think I'm weak or I'm soft. So it's a lot of fear. But the man, instead of saying, you know, what you said hurt my feelings, or because men in prison especially can't talk like that. So it's more, this guy disrespected me, or what are you saying? You're disrespecting me. We have to fight now. And now it's a way to fight back for his honor. And suddenly we all, okay, well, yeah, he did get disrespected, but more it's, man, none of us ever want that. Like, I definitely didn't want anyone to think like I was soft, or I didn't want anyone to ever think like I could be a victim or targeted for, you know, being taking food from me, stealing stuff from my property, becoming a sexual victim, any of that. So I think a lot of men in prison, we just hide behind this word disrespect. And I see it play out in here. Maybe people don't use it to that extreme, but a lot of anger, a lot of our emotions that we express, or a lot of things we tell ourselves about certain situations are based off of fear or the avoidance of fear that I've seen.
I recently watched a documentary. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called The Work.
Yes.
And it was very, very intense to watch it. And I'm curious how, when you are in prison, how do you go from that mentality of disrespect and I have to protect my honor and all this, to wanting to participate in an intensive group therapy like they do in the movie, or your Defy Ventures program?
They have to come to a certain spot where, so what they showed in the work though, it would have to only be achieved in a group setting where there's a lot of trust, where people have built up trust. I was involved with this organization and this group called the Alternatives to Violence Project. It's a 3-day workshop. A lot of the stuff, I saw a lot of similarities between what we did and what was showed in the work. So I saw that actually happening quite a bit. Sometimes not to that extreme, but sometimes to a worse extent. So it just depended on the workshops we were in. But I would say that can only be done inside a community that has built up some type of trust. And of course, somebody that comes into a group or joins a workshop, it's, you know, you have to let them just barely first put their toes in the water. let them just share something very superficial, like my favorite food growing up. And then it starts going deeper and deeper where people can start opening up and sharing. But that's where I have found, and as you saw in my book, is that the more vulnerable that I was when I spoke of my experiences, that's when people resonated with it the most in there. And that's when men would come up to me after and said, I like what you shared. It impacted me this way. So that's where I learned when I doing my writing process. I go, I saw men around me learn best when I shared of my own challenges and I was vulnerable of my own failures. So that's the way I'd like to write this book, since that's the way I think these guys will understand in there. And the great thing about it is I am seeing that it's not only making an impact. I mean, I can't even see what impact it's going to make yet in there once we get these books in. But I've had people that were formerly incarcerated say, oh my God, this book is going to be so good for them. But then more importantly, I see it's making an impact on just the regular reader out here, with numerous people messaging me, emailing me, reaching out to tell me like how it's made them examine certain aspects of their own life. So, which is, it's a really cool feeling to see like, wow, that I'm able to make an impact in a meaningful way like this with people. I mean, even in reading your review, I thought, man, this is great. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it does. I mean, it was obvious to me pretty early on, the similarities between your book and, say, an account of the Holocaust. And, it's just like a very traumatic experience. Doesn't matter why you were in prison. It's a traumatic experience for you. And even the reason why you went to prison is a traumatic experience for you. And I think a lot of people don't afford people that are locked up that kind of perspective or empathy. And I think your book does a wonderful job of showing that, but also balancing it, right, with like the search for meaning chapter, which was probably the hardest chapter for me to read, with a brutal act of violence. And so it's not saying like, hey, look at us, we're victims. It's just showing the full picture, which I really appreciated. Speaking of, the reason that you did go to prison, you used to qualify it and tell people it was a gang-related murder. Why did you stop doing that?
It was right around that time when I was reading books on personal responsibility, and I saw like other men in some groups I was in that I was facilitating, like in the victims awareness. They qualified like why they were in prison. Oh, I'm here because it was a gang-related murder. It was my life or theirs. And I saw that, I go, oh man, I do that same thing too. Or I always felt it was a sense of justification in how they described it. And then which made me think, do I do the same thing? And the sobering answer was yes. So I had challenged myself, because I had this habit of journaling and putting things that I want to challenge myself to. And one of my challenges was I wanted to just say, I'm in prison for the murder of a human being, and leave it at that. And sure enough, you put it out there to the universe and you get that opportunity. And I had that opportunity when I was speaking to a news reporter from NPR. And we just ended up talking. She was asking about programs I created. And she said, what are you in prison for? And I said, I'm in prison for the murder of another human being. And I saw her looking and wanting me to explain more, and everything in me wanted to explain more. But I had to remind myself about that challenge for myself. But the weird thing was, the more I sat still with it, the more this sense of liberation came over me, where I felt, you know what, I'm not that same person anymore. I don't have to qualify this. Yes, I committed that murder, but I'm not that same person, so I don't have to justify this to give a reason why. Even though it's human nature. I mean, like I've said that, that was the first time I said it like that. Since then, I've said it numerous times, and I've seen where it's made other people uncomfortable, where they start making excuses for me. And I had to continue. They say, oh, Was it gang related? And I said, well, I used to be in a gang. Oh, well, were you
Mm.
forced? No, I was not forced. Oh, was it your life or theirs? No, I followed them and I shot them in cold blood. So it was like they want to make excuses because I guess it's uncomfortable and they just want to be okay with, wait, this isn't that bad. And I kind of have to tell them, no, this is exactly what it was, but I am okay with that.
Yeah. I obviously the two aren't comparable, and it's not about comparing them, but last year I went kind of public with this secret of mine that I'd been harboring for my whole life, right? And it was that I prostituted myself to older men, and I had that same experience as you, where I would tell people that and they would say, so are you gay? Or like trying to find like a reason to make it okay that I did those things. And nowadays, I guess where I'm at with that is that like I feel such intense fear over ever sort of relapsing, right? And like doing that again, because then does that mean that all of the stuff that I've said before sort of cancels out? Like, did you ever experience something like that? Not where you considered murdering again, I'm not saying that, but like, did you ever have shifts in or self-doubt, right? Where, well, now people are going to think that I was full of shit before. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I remember reading that about you in your bio. I go, that is true power right there, to be able to own that and say that. So, I mean, I respected reading that about you. And yes, when I was on this path, did I ever slip, or do I still have thoughts in my head sometimes? Yes, I think the difference now is that I at least aware of it. I'm at least aware that, okay, this has frustrated me. This has angered me. I mean, in my book, I even shared like, okay, I had created the grief and loss group, and by this time, the light had totally come on for me, and I was on my path for transformation. But then when the group got shut down and I found out that one of the other prisoners had stolen my curriculum and wrote it up as his and submitted it as his, I mean, I had to share it. Yeah, man, I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to inflict pain on him until I realized, you know what does it say about me that I'm still chasing this recognition? Or what was my motivation in creating this group? Was it to gain recognition, or was it to get accolades, or is this really to help others heal? And if this man can help others heal, regardless if it's under my name or not, what does it matter? And I had to sit with that and live with it, and it was okay. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to make sure, like, even the guy, because I know the mentality of the men in there, because I know that was how my mentality. You could take 4, 5, 6 or 6 steps forward, but then they might slip. And a lot of the times that slip will make them say, I've failed, I cannot do this. And I wanted them to make sure they could slip, they could fail, they could still get up and they do this. And that's why I wanted to make sure that was very transparent in what I shared in there, you know. And I come home, you know, which is the ultimate goal for all the guys. I've done the good, I've done right, even up to leading to going home. I'm found suitable, and yet I'm stupid enough to still lie to my supervisor and bring out a stolen prison ID, which was illegal at the time. You know, so I mean, I had to make sure I included that to make sure the guys know, you know, I'm still with my journey. This is not near perfect, and there's still challenges. And that's the way I wanted to leave it with them. Hopefully that they get their own lessons, and I hope that they will still move forward when they inevitably slip or fall.
And you mentioned slips and failures or falls. The one that stood out to me was when you went to your first hearing and got rejected for parole. You know, I was just thinking like, man, when the lockdowns happened, I was feeling like super stressed out and all these things. And it's like, that doesn't even come close to what you must have been feeling at that moment. And so it gave me kind of like anxiety to read that. But then the way that you handled it was by going back to your group and asking for feedback so that you could improve. Where did you find the strength to go back to the drawing board?
I'm not sure. I just know it bothered me so much that she had told me, I'll even tell you, Nicholas, like when I read it again out here, what was it? When I started writing my book was 2019. So this is 6 years after that hearing. I'm home, I'm free, but rereading her words out here still hurt me. So during that time, 5 years. So it was basically come back in 5 years, almost like out here during a lockdown. Well, what if someone told you you're locked in your house for 5 years, which still doesn't compare because like in our house, we still have our freedom. We still get food, we get everything. You're still in prison for another 5 years. And what if the law changes and then they say lifers cannot ever go home, or a new governor comes in? There's all this stuff going on. Plus in that community, like I said, it's a fishbowl. Everybody there knows, okay, well, if Quan knows what he's doing, how did he get a 5-year denial? So there are people that didn't believe in my journey, didn't believe in me, and didn't believe in what I was trying to do, where they use that as ammunition. Like, who's this guy? Look where he's going with this, So for me, I found asking for feedback, especially during that time in our groups, if given in the spirit of love and building each other up, those are true gifts. And that's the way I approached it with my fellow facilitators. Like, please just help me. If this is something that's still there, please tell me about this. Please tell me that I can improve. Which was a frustrating thing, because then they all came back and told me, no, we don't see anything. And yet I knew, there was something there in what the commissioner said. I don't know if she went over the top, but for me, it's like, okay, how do I get this to a place where someone doesn't say it about me? Until I came to the point, what does this really say that I have to prove her wrong or to prove anybody wrong? That's just their experience of me. So regardless of whether she was right or wrong, that was her experience of me. So obviously in that interaction with her, in her experience with me, I failed in that part, which is fine. And when I got to that part, it's okay then. So then that's where personal responsibility comes in, where I don't have to say it's her fault. She didn't like me. She didn't understand me. Whereas more, no, you know what I'm responsible for is in that interaction with her, I was ineffective with her, and I came across as, to her, in her words, arrogant, egotistical, prideful, however she described it. But yes, still reading it, did it bother me? Absolutely. Like, even talking about this today, yeah, it still bothers me. But why does it bother me? Maybe there is something there. Maybe I'm not as good as basically hiding it or pushing it away as much as I like. That's the only way I can describe it.
And the hearings were just like so like filled with tension and almost like you're watching a suspense film or something. What is it about taking responsibility and showing that at the hearing that those people can then deem you sort of worthy of going back outside? And how much is that more important than the no longer a danger to society thing, or are they the same thing?
Well, I think I think they all tie in together. I mean, these are great questions you're asking, because it's exactly in alignment with how I was watching these hearings. If a man cannot go in and just own his own choices, personal responsibility is saying I had full intention to shoot and kill everybody in the car, instead of hedging it and saying, you know what, I didn't mean to kill him. I only shot at the car. It's two different things, the same act, but the way I describe it are two different ways of going about it. Now, especially if the record shows I followed them for 20 miles on a freeway. I had a gun, I aimed, I plotted, I organized, and I orchestrated everything. Then suddenly, if I go up there, everything on the record shows that, and I just say, I didn't mean to kill anybody. I only shot into the car. I didn't know anybody was going to die. But yet I unloaded 15 rounds and I had another clip. And I as soon as that first clip ran out, I already stuck in the second clip, ready to shoot again. I mean, that story doesn't make sense. And I think for myself, the first hearing was the first time ever that they knew that I committed the murder, because at trial, on the stand, I had lied. And I said I didn't do it, and the jury believed me. And so the record was always unclear. Did Quan do the shooting, or was it the person that testified against him that did the shooting? So it was always unclear who did the shooting. So the first time that I went up and I owned it was my very first hearing, which my attorney, and even it's funny because my editor, when she read the book and stuff, she goes, I think I know why the commissioner said this to you. I didn't understand at first, but now understanding more of your journey, I think she did not understand what personal responsibility looked like to you, because she was so used to this context of others hedging it. And so for me, I think I was okay with not explaining to her, but for her, it may have made her uncomfortable. But then, at the end of the day, that's also her journey to discover. So I think for myself, when I was coaching the men in there, for me, it wasn't coaching to get them to go home. It was coaching to get them to come to this sense of personal responsibility in their lives, because it already gave me such freedom from in there. And I wished it for all the men around me. And that's when I became very keen on listening to what people said, because I think the words how a person describes an incident gives me a very good glimpse of how they see the world, where they stand in it, and if they're coming from a place of blaming and victimhood, or are they coming from a place of choice and personal responsibility. And I could probably catch that within 5 minutes. Even out here, I hear how people talk about it, and most especially in there. But just even things out here where I remember I messaged one of my friends right before the book launch. Asked her about, because she also wrote a book, and asked her about, like, hey, I was curious, like, do your publishers help you with this? And her response was like, aren't your publishers helping you? I said, yeah, they actually are, but I was just curious because I haven't heard from them. So I'm curious on your end. I'm asking you as a friend, like. And then instead of just just saying, what, I'm having a bad day or whatever it is, it was more, oh, I'm on another call right now. So just there was no sense of responsibility there. So I see it played over and over and over out here a lot, which is fine, but it just gives me, in a weird sense, a sense of gratefulness to how I could navigate through my day without letting what she said as my friend bother me, but just realizing, okay, all this professed self-worth, I see there still needs a lot more on her journey, and I could see that without judging it or assessing, but just understanding, realizing, and just being okay with, okay, if I could see that, then let me discover some more about myself.
On the topic of judging others, the murderers and rapists chapter, there is this whole question of, I guess in prison, rapists are seen as the lowest of the low. And I think it was you in that chapter that challenged that idea, because, if you commit rape, then that person still has a chance to recover. If you murder them, they don't.
Yes.
What were some takeaways from viewing or learning about that shift, and why do you think that people put themselves above others?
People put themselves above others, especially in prison, and I'm sure even out here, because we're at a miserable place in our lives. So I believe it's a human tendency to want to cast ourselves in a good light. Nobody wants to be seen as bad or evil or less than. So as long as I am navigating through life, finding out or pointing out, look at this person over here, he's in prison for this. Look at that person over there, he did this. or even out here, gossiping about someone. Oh, look at this person at work. She can't do anything right. Look at this guy over here. He's a slob. As long as I'm finding things wrong with others, then it makes me feel a little bit better than them, which in essence makes me, not as bad or whatever is going on in my life. And I realized that during that time with the therapy, this tendency of ours, and especially this tendency of mine to judge and to hold myself above others, is what contributed to my arrogance and my pridefulness for all those years. So, and then I was thinking about if it boils down to it, and understanding the pain that I caused, not only to just one human life, but the human life connected to that one human life. I contrasted his mother's pain with my mother's pain, but then seeing where I was at, my mother could be grateful I was alive. My brother got to see me become a better person. And yet the mother of the man I shot and killed did not get to see that opportunity happen. I realized, this tendency of ours to see, to hold ourselves above others, especially in a group, and as I'm listening to the other guys, like I told you earlier, I could kind of see how they see the world and their place in it. How does this make sense? We're in prison for murdering someone, but yet we're still saying we're better than the rapist. And then if I had asked my victim's mother, the mother of the man that I murdered, I guarantee she would rather have her son alive, even if I had raped and sodomized him, whatever, than shot and killed him. And that's when I realized that, and I had to tell the guys that. So, which causes its own controversy inside inside our little group, as you read in the book. But yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you'll remember this specifically, but I think it was earlier in the lockdowns, you participated in a workshop for Scribe for writing a memoir. And all I remember is, because I had to leave, but right as I was leaving, you started talking about the concept of the people sitting at your table. Do you remember that? Can you sort of refresh my mind on what that was?
Yeah, we did this exercise in prison. Was basically like, who's at your table? It's basically, who do you seat at your table of, basically my table, who do I seat there that I want to live up to, or what values am I trying to live up to? So during my book writing process, I, at Scribe now they call it the table of truth. Like, what is my truth, and where it's like basically my North Star of where I want to lead my life. So at the table, in my mind's eye, it's who's sitting at this table while I'm doing this writing process. So at the table was my father. I also seated at the table my younger self, my 8, 10, 12-year-old self. I seated at the table the man that I shot and killed, Min Nguyen. And then also at the table was my avatar, which at Scribe they taught us, like, who is the book for? Is, a man that's stuck in prison. My avatar was named David, a spitting image of my old bunkie who had done 40-something years in prison already. Will most likely probably never go home because he's in such a dark place. He knew I was able to help others find their freedom. I knew I could help him, but yet he was too terrified to even sit down with me to share his parole transcripts. So those were the 4 people that I had sitting at my table while I'm writing during my process of making my decision for the day, or making my excuses of why I don't want to write. But then each of those people reminded me, this is my truth. This is how I have to share it. So even when I got to a place where I don't think I should share this, it makes me uncomfortable, then I'm reminded, this is not about me. It's for my avatar. It's not about me. This is for my younger self. This is not about me. This is, what would my dad say if he was sitting here? What would my younger self say? What would my victim say? So all of those people were at my table, and they also helped me through my writing process.
And I imagine that in, even smaller decisions in your life now, you still sort of use those people as
when I'm making small decisions or even big decisions, when I can remember, absolutely they would help me. And that was basically what we what we used it for in the workshops that I was in.
I really am getting so much out of this conversation, and I wish we had another hour to go, but I guess my last question is a very simple one. You talk a lot about different books that you read, and I take a lot out of your book, and so I'm curious, what was the most important book that you read while you were in prison?
Oh, that would be, I don't have most important. I mean, they were all contributed to, I mean, I could give you a list of certain authors or certain books, but
or one of.
I mean, they just, yeah. C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity was one. The Alchemist, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, Sensible Self-Help, even business books like Good to Great by Jim Collins, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't know, there's just so many, and they all came at like perfect times to just, you know, I would guess have to say like polish a different part of my inner jewel. Like each of these books contributed in different ways.
Yeah. No, I think that list will be plenty for me to add to my reading list. So once again, man, thank you so much for coming on. I think your story is truly remarkable, and I'm excited to share it with people, and I'm really excited that you're sharing it with people. So I wish you continued success with the book and with your personal growth.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear like the publishing team's going to give me the final tallies today, because we ran that promotion for the week, but where I was matching every book that's purchased that I get to donate to someone incarcerated. But yesterday they let me know I think they're going to finalize the numbers today, but there's already going to be over 1,000 books that I get to donate into prison.
That's amazing.
1,000 lives, hopefully, that I can impact in some small way, and hopefully they share the book. And I know the personality of people in prison, if it's a book that's impactful, they share it. So I'm hoping it will bring some light into a really dark place for the guys.
One more thing. Yeah. Where can people find you, or where can people help to support? I mean, I know that the book donation thing is over, but where can people support the cause still?
Yeah, well, the book donation thing is over for now. I mean, I'm going to look, because right now we gave it to Defy Ventures. I'm in the process of lining up other organizations and doing more promotions down the line. Because, you know, like I said from the beginning, the book is for the men inside. It's just, how do I sustain this and how do I get this in there to them? So it's on Amazon. They can find it on Audible, Kindle, all of that, Barnes and Noble, Sparrow and the Razor Wire. They can find me through my website. The easy one is sparrowintherazorwire.com, because I got to point, because already do quanxhuynh.com, but I was just afraid some people would not be able to spell my name correctly and might not find it. So I did 2, just the Sparrow and the Razor Wire points to it. Quanxhuynh.com is my website, and that's, they can find me on all social media as the same thing as @QuanXhuynh. So what is it? QUANX and then HUYNH. And
I'll link all those in the description.
Cool.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, and take care. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.